Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamley. As I'm sure you know by now, Another View is moving to Thursdays at noon beginning January 9th, 2020. While the move is a good one for the show, it's not so good for our resident cardiologist and co-host of Another View on Health, Dr. Keith Newby. Our new schedule and his patient load are not compatible, truly our loss. So in this, his last official day with Another View, we get up close and personal with this husband, father, deacon, entrepreneur, and cardiologist, and get his thoughts on the state of the Black community. Another View is next. Stay tuned.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamley. Happy New Year. And we here at Another View wish you peace, health, happiness, and prosperity in 2020. Before we get started on our show today, let me just let you know, I know we just finished one holiday, which was New Year's Day. However, Martin Luther King's birthday is coming up on the 20th of this month, and the Urban League of Hampton Roads will again hold its annual Martin Luther King breakfast. The theme this year is Reimagine the Future, the Fierce Urgency of Now. And Janice Underwood, who is Virginia's first statewide director of diversity, equity, and inclusion, will be the speaker. It is on January the 20th, Monday, January the 20th, at the Portsmouth Norfolk Renaissance Hotel. And a lot of people are going to be honored this year as part of the event, including John Broderick, who is president of Old Dominion University, Cecilia Tucker, everyone knows CC Tucker, who is the assistant to the president for community relations at ODU, Dr. Cassandra Newby Alexander, noted historian and dean of the College of Liberal Arts at Norfolk State University and a true friend of Another View. And I might be a friend of our guest today, too. We'll see. Howard Kern, President and CEO of Centera Healthcare. Mary Blunt, Senior Vice President and Corporate Vice President at Centera. Bob Aston, Chairman of the Board of Town Bank. Tom Hasty III, Senior Executive Vice President and Regulatory Risk Officer at Town Bank. Joan Brock, Civic Leader and Philanthropist. Gayleen Knoyton, Community Servant and activist, and Marquise Hunt, Chairman Emeritus of the National NAACP Youth and College Division Task Force. So it's going to be a great event. You want to be there. For tickets, visit ulhr.org or call 757-627-0864. That's ulhr.org or call 757-627-0864. So I hope to see you in the place. So today is the last Friday that you will hear Another View. We're moving to Thursdays, beginning next Thursday, January 9th. Sadly for us, Another View on Health co-host Dr. Keith Newby won't be coming with us, something about his patients and his day job. But in all seriousness, the new schedule is not compatible with his patient load. So today we thought we'd get up close and personal with Dr. Newby to talk about his life and his thoughts on the state of the African American community as we enter this new decade. Keith, how are you?
How are you?
How bittersweet is this?
I know. I tell you, I was debating about this. I've been avoiding even having this conversation. I got so used to coming here and hanging out with you for that hour. I don't know. I got to figure out what I'm going to do with myself on Fridays. From 12 to 1.
Absolutely. Well, we certainly are going to miss you. However, we are going to have you back from time to time as your schedule will allow and so forth. But I understand because I had to make a lot of changes personally also in order to accommodate this new schedule.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough one. That just happens to be a busy day.
Yeah.
As we go into the weekend, people get selectively sick. Mondays, post-holidays, and then Thursday, for some reason, that's when people seem to get the sickest.
Wow. Well, every now and then we are doing a segment or a show that we call Up Close and Personal, where we really kind of get to know the person behind the person that is in the public eye, so to speak. So our first one was Gary McCullum. Okay. I know he's a church member of yours and a friend.
Yep.
And so you're our second one.
Oh, okay. I'm honored. Thank you.
And I found out some really interesting things about you.
Oh, here we go. I was wondering.
Well, first of all, I want to know, what is it like? What was it like to be the youngest child in a very accomplished family? Did you feel any pressure that you had to succeed above and beyond everybody else, or were you rebellious, like, y'all do your thing, I'm going to do me?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. The interesting thing coming up, my family, we had certain expectations. Both my grandfather, who was an educator, most of my family are educators. My brother and myself and a couple of cousins, we're the only actual MDs in the family.
Okay.
Everybody
And
else
your dad was MD.
Yes, and everybody else were educators. So there were certain expectations that we had growing up, and so I had my moments. I think when my father got sick, and he died at 41, and he had a primary cardiac tumor, and you just, certain things in your life you find change you that you don't always realize till later on as you grow up and how things impact your life. But I think that really impacted me, when you grow up. And again, today's time, a lot of people grow up without fathers. That's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
But in real time, when it's forever.
How old were you?
I was 7 years old.
7.
And
Wow.
I remember when he got sick. He got sick in June of 1970 and died January 1st of 1971.
Wow.
Around 10 o'clock that evening. I'll never forget that night. Again, those things that impact you. I remember him being comatose. I remember my mother lifting me up to kiss him goodbye.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I still, to this day, remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
So those things impact. So, when you're growing up, and my mom was a tough lady. A lot of people see her now, and it makes me laugh. She comes to the office, and they say, "Oh, your mom's so sweet. She looks so docile." I said, "You see this bruise on my..." When I came up in that era where, there were expectations. And my mom was one of those kind of people that, it wasn't discussed about going to college. It wasn't discussed about so much that you were going to be whatever. There were certain expectations. We didn't talk about it. You just knew,
that you were
going to do it. And the question just became, what would I be? So I went through this process, that I definitely was the rebellious one of the family. No question about that. I mean, if you talk to my brother or sister, they would say I was the problem child. I was the one that had to do it different, had to be my way. And my mom, of course, some of those bruises were, are you paying any bills around here? I don't remember seeing your name on the lease, the mortgage statement. I don't remember seeing your name on any of the utilities bills.
Exactly. So you're going to do what I say while you live in my house.
Exactly. And I respected that, and I understood that. I left my mom's house when I was 18 in college. Had a job, I was working while I was in school, and because I wanted to do it my way, but the one thing I will say that she brought us up with this understanding that if you make choices, you have to live with the choices you make, and you have to be responsible for those choices. So, going up, and I made some, we all make errors, but I think in the end I learned from every error I made, and I used that to become stronger. And I hope that I'm teaching my kids the same thing. So,
so Dr. James Newby is your brother.
Yes.
Dr. Cassandra Newby Alexander is your sister.
Yes.
How much difference in age between the three of you?
I always joke when I always call them the old crew. My brother's 7.5 years older than me, and my sister's 5 years older than me.
Oh, okay. So they did boss you around.
Yeah. Well, they tried, but they did to a certain degree. But it's kind of funny. My sister and I, they say came from the same egg because we have a lot of similarities in terms of our personalities, and definitely, we all have the same drive. We want to be the best at whatever it is we do. Nobody's perfect, but we have always tried to. It's almost like that was just our nature, is to say, okay, I'm going to do my best to be the best at whatever it is, and you take nothing less than that. So you're always trying to be better. You make an error. You say, okay, what did I learn from this error? Let me not make this error again.
Don't do it again.
And then you learn from it, and then you move on, and you don't think about it. And I never take that time to say, okay, I'm going to. You just you don't think about trying to be good at what you do. You just shoot for that goal, and that's what I do. But humility keeps me stable. My Christian faith and my humility to say, although I may work hard, but I never have expectations of anything. I never think I deserve anything. I work hard and I try to say, okay, I'm seeking this goal. I'm gonna stay humble. You never create enemies if you can help it, and you just put your head down, hunker down, and you work.
But you decided that. Well, let me ask you this before I get into your career itself. You went to Norfolk State for undergrad, and now your father was, in addition to being a physician, was a musician.
Yes.
And you minored in music.
Yes, I love it.
I had no
music.
idea.
Yeah, I love music. Always have. That's
so. What do you sing? Do you play? What do you do?
Listen, I would say this: when I was a young fella, when I first started in music, I sang. I was in I started in the. We sang in church,
sure.
but I actually started to sing more when I was in junior high school. Of course, it's called middle school now, but in my day, it was junior high school.
Mine too.
And I never thought I was that good at it, but I was selected in the All Virginia Choir one year.
Oh, okay.
And when I was in the 10th or 11th grade in Maury High School. And I was I was into jazz. I started listening to jazz when I was in the 5th grade.
Wow.
I was in.
Was that the influence from your dad?
Yeah, it was a lot of that was him. I used to watch him play because he played a lot of instruments. He played the saxophone was his principal instrument, but he played the flute, the clarinet, the guitar, and and I just used to listen. So when I was growing up, it's kind of interesting when you think back. My mom, she always laughs because you never, my parents weren't beaters. They didn't beat you, but if I got a whipping, I deserved it. It was no question in my mind I deserved it. My father only beat me once in my life. I'll never forget that. And I deserved it. Yeah, I never deserved not paying attention, and he told me to do something, and I wasn't going to do it. And I paid the price. But there were a couple of times I remember when I think I was probably, because he died when I was 7, so we were probably looking at 5 years old. It's just interesting how you remember certain things. I'm throwing a ball up against the house. I'm outside playing, and father came out there and said, "Listen, I need you to stop that because I'm scared you're gonna, hurt part of the siding because I'm banging this ball up, and of course I'm gonna do it my way." And but interestingly, he didn't beat me that day. I said he only got me once, but he made me come in the house because I kept doing it, and he said, I'm sit in that chair, and I sat in the chair, and my mom would lay it down sleeping. I'm just sitting there. And that was my punishment for that. But I said, this is boring. But I couldn't move, and I wasn't about to move either because, my family, my grandfather and my father, they just had a presence that you didn't mess with them too much. Didn't have to. My grandfather, who was an educator in the area, I was scared to death of him. He never laid a finger on me, but it was just something about his presence.
The way that he
carried himself. That when we used to go over his house to visit, I sat in that couch and I didn't move. And my mom said, "Well, you could go outside." I said, "That's okay.
No, I'm not getting in trouble.
I'm sitting right here." And but that was part of what makes you respectful, and that's one of the things I think is being lost now, and is we've lost respect for our elders. We don't have that. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Nowadays, you can't say anything to anybody's kid, even though the kid bad as all get out. And you're just looking like, okay, I'm backing off, but unfortunately, so the children now pay a price because they don't come up with that same level of respect and humility.
When you went to medical school, had you already decided you were going to do cardiology, and it was because of your dad's heart problem?
I thought about that, but I don't think so. I tell you, I was always initially when I went to medical school, I wanted to be an internist, like my father, and I will have to say that piece. But I tell you, there was a guy. I think his name was Propert, as my remembrance serves, David Propert. I'm pretty sure that was his name. He was a cardiologist that was at EVMS, and he taught physiology. And I fell in love with cardiac physiology. We had a 3-month block when I first started medical school, and it was anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry. And medical school was hard. I mean, I'll tell anybody this. I mean, what we learned, I think we learned a semester. When I was in college, what we learned in a semester of biochem, we did in 2 days in medical school.
Wow.
It was,
so it was intense.
Yeah, it was intense, but cardiac physiology, I just fell in love with it. I said, oh, this is what I want to do. I mean, I didn't think cardiology going into medical school, but I knew the first 3 months I was in medical school, I said, this is what I want to do. And I deviated maybe for about a month because I worked with LD Britt, and I thought I wanted to do surgery for a minute, but that fell back a little with cardiology. I said, nah, this, I mean, sometimes you have people who influence your life. Dr. James Willie, who passed away about a year ago, is an OBGYN. I liked surgical procedures. So you have people that influence your life as you go along. And I thought maybe I want to do some kind of surgical aspect, but I tell you, diagnosing and treating is something I've always loved to do.
So I know you're a man of faith,
Yes.
yet your Christian background is very, very strong.
Yes.
How does that intersect with your being a doctor? And in medical school, what do they teach you, if anything, about faith and medicine?
Not a thing.
Really?
Not a thing.
They don't discuss it at all.
Not a thing. Because nowadays that's a tough road, because you get people that will get offended when you start bringing religion into something. I tell you one thing that, my opinion, being a good doctor takes, it doesn't take. I mean, you have to know the information, but more importantly, you have to be able to listen to people. You have to be able to take what they say and say, okay, you hear a topic, like somebody says, I'm having chest discomfort. You have to take that piece of information. You have to inquire about that, but you also have to start looking at them as a total person. So knowing that, you have to be able to read people and understand people. So the background part of reading people is also knowing some of their religious backgrounds and some of their faith aspects. So what I do is I find that I will test the waters with people. You say certain comments and you look at the response. And if you could tell, like I had some people about, when we talk about like doing a procedure, and they say, well, what would you do? Meaning when they're trying to decide they want to do a procedure or not. And I say, well, it just depends. I say, I'm a man of faith, so I always talk to my God and ask him to advise me. And you see what their response is. And if they give you a piece, well, that's a good idea that that's something that you can incorporate. Yeah, you incorporate in. But
a part of their treatment.
If they look at you like you're on crack or something, well, I'm not going to bring that up again. I mean, but you do use, I found that being a man of faith, what it does is it teaches you humility. That piece of my life.
And compassion.
And very much so. But, because sometimes, you look at, people can debate with me about the Bible all day long. But when you really read what the book is about and what it teaches us is love, faith, compassion, and just a ability to see the world from other people's perspectives. When you really think about what it really entails, especially when you get into the New Testament. So for me, I try my best to incorporate that piece. I pray every morning before I start any procedures or do anything. And when my wife and I used to pray every morning. I don't do it because I don't want to wake her up, because I have to get up so early now. I mean, she gets mad at me because she wants me to do that. But I just, I'm like, I pray over you, then I'll go about my way. But I just, I found it gives me stability in my life. So for me, that is kind of what I do that helps me, and it helps me in my decision-making process. Again, not perfect. I'm not going to ever profess that, but I use that as a mechanism to help me make decisions, because you have to put yourself in that person's place. The hardest part, though, one part of this job I'll never get used to, is that part when people are going to leave this earth. That piece is still, for me, the hardest part of the job, is when this person is on their last breath, and how do you deal with that? What do you say? What are the things that this other person is going to need to hear to give them comfort, or the families that you're dealing with? that's the piece of this job that you never get. I mean, I don't get used to it. Some people who, whomever, they may say no big deal for them. But for me, it means a lot. And I think part of it is because I reflect back on my father and remembering what it was like to lose him. And I found the unfortunate reality is I find that to some degree, I have found that the negative part that affected me is I back off of family sometimes. When I say back off, meaning, I find that hurt that you deal with, is a hurt I don't want to experience again. So I find that I may sometimes not be as responsive to like my mom, who's fussing at me all the time because she said I don't call her enough. But I find that that hurt for my father still reflects on not wanting to lose her. So as you get closer to people, there's going to be more
that
painful.
It's coming at some point.
Yeah, at some point in time. So I find that you avoid it. That's why the human side of me is always one that I know because I have that human side. I can appreciate how other people feel. I jump on folks when they don't take the medicine, but I do that for a reason. It's because I care about people and I care about helping them. But sometimes you'll hear these reasons like we talked about before the show. Somebody say, "Well, I didn't think I needed blood pressure medicine anymore because I was doing fine." I'm like, "But you was doing fine because you was taking it." I say, "What made this is not a cold.
Right.
I mean, this is a life challenge that you're going to have." So but you find that as a result of that, you alter how you deal with people because of pain. I've had, my patients, I'm close with them. I mean, I treat them like family. And that's part of who makes me who I am. But that's that Christian background that helps me do it.
Does it also keep you, because some doctors get that God complex, that they are, because I am the doctor.
Yeah.
I know it all, and so therefore you have to listen to me. Does that keep you more grounded?
Yeah, I don't have that. I mean, I'll debate with people because, when you start talking physiology, I'm like, you can't debate with me about physiology now. I mean, because you don't have that background to debate those points. I get people telling me, "Oh, I know my body." I'm like, yeah, you may know your body, but you don't know medicine. I said, and that's the difference. I said, but, the thing is, I tell people all the time, lifestyle changes. Many of the things we deal with, like hypertension, diabetes, which can lead to heart problems, a lot of that stuff you can avoid. But see, we have this selective way we handle the world. Like we'll say, okay, I got people that will bring in a vat of vitamins. I mean, like they have a freaking suitcase that's several $100s worth of this stuff. They're fussing me about a $30 pill they got to take, but they'll have hundreds of dollars of vitamins they're taking. And the first thing I asked them was, how that's doing anything? I mean, really. I said, you may think but the question is, do you really know? And if you just change your lifestyle, don't go to McDonald's or no offense to McDonald's or anybody else, but
fast food.
Fast food in general. If you go to these types of places and you're eating this type of processed food, that's not going to help you get where you want to be. If you're trying to get off medicine, change your life.
Yeah,
you'd be surprised how that will impact.
And that is one thing that. Particularly for the African American community, trying to get people to understand that lifestyle changes have to happen in order to become healthy. I mean, we spent several years now together talking about this very issue.
Yeah.
So if there was one thing that you want to say to the community about their health, what would it be?
Well, I don't think there's any one thing you could ever say, but I tell people all the time, take it seriously, though. I mean, I tell you one of the things I tell people all the time is if you are a husband or wife or a mother or a father or brother or sister, things you do impact your family. A lot of people, the most selfish thing I hear a patient tell me is, well, I'm going to do what I want to do. They'll be all right. And I'm like, well, hold up, time out. I said, time out. Did you not ask that woman to be your wife? Did you not have your children? I said, did they ask to be in the position they're in? I said, are you that selfish that you are going to think that, the choices you make won't impact them at all? And I guess because I know, now my father's cancer has nothing to do with anything he did. It's just the unfortunate reality of things. But like you have somebody that smokes like a chimney, or they are diabetic and they're, their blood sugar is like freaking 500 on a regular basis, they're going to have problems over time.
And it's going to impact you financially, emotionally, physically, and every other way.
Think about a wife who may be a homemaker who, was living off her husband's income, who then all of a sudden says, okay, I'm going to do what I want to do. Put her in a precarious situation where now she has to be by herself because you made a choice to go off and do what you wanted to do. Now, granted, that's what God gives us, free will.
Yeah.
But do you not feel responsibility to those around you to try to be there for them so that they can be, because it's not just even an issue of financial, but emotional.
Yeah.
You've been with somebody for years and years.
And then all of a sudden they're gone.
Yeah, gone. I mean, that's a tough road to walk down.
If you're just joining us, we're up close and personal with husband, father, entrepreneur, and cardiologist, Dr. Keith Newby. Today is Dr. Newby's last official day with Another View, but we will have him back from time to time as his schedule permits. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What questions do you have for Dr. Newby? 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Heather joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Heather. You're on the air.
Hi. Thank you so much. I will miss you on Fridays, Dr. Newby. I understand your schedule. I just want to thank you for teaching us to take our health seriously. I have learned so much listening to your insightful and practical, pragmatic words. I'm a hospital retired chaplain, interfaith, and I know how much your faith has inspired your medical care and your comfort.
Thank you, Heather.
I just want to say, I hear the music in your voice, and your father and grandfather and mother live with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you for that kind comment.
Appreciate you, Heather. Take care. So now you have 2 daughters and a son.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
What's the difference between raising your daughters versus your son?
I'm going to tell you, my wife gets on me all the time, especially my youngest, because she says I spoil her too much. It's something about those girls, I mean, I love all my kids, but something about the girls that I think maybe because of that fatherly instinct, my son is such a good guy. He's so respectful and insightful on things. This like I have this love. I respect him for who he is because it's tough growing up, because he always tells me, Dad, I want to do this on my own. Anytime he wants to, he doesn't want me to help him do anything. Now, I keep telling him, it's like my brother and I were laughing about this not too long ago. I said, to me, there are other families who've always had where they've helped their kids along. Now, I would never give them, per se things, but you want to feel like you can help them, because if other families help their children and give them opportunities, but they have to take that opportunity and do something with it.
Right, exactly.
But my son is like because he said he doesn't want to live in my shadow. He feels,
is he the oldest?
No, he's actually the middle one.
He's the middle one.
My oldest is Nicole. She's 30.
Okay,
and she just turned 30 this year. So
she interned with Another View.
Yeah. So she's 30. She's up in D.C. works for the EPA up there, and and my son, he's trying to be an aspiring actor. He's been wanting to be in acting for years and years and years. He's always been doing it for a while. So we'll see where he goes with that. But I just told him, I said, listen, just make sure you have your life well versed and you know what you want to do. And I said, but you always want to have your backup plans. My youngest, is heavy in the ballet, and she's very talented young lady. But my wife always fusses at me about her. And she's right to a large degree. I've spoiled the girls, and my son, I know he's like, "What's up, Dad?" I mean, what? So he gets on me about that piece. But I told him, I said, that's part of being a man. I said, I'm not going to treat you like I treat them. I said, I'm not supposed to.
So I'm curious, did you have the talk, meaning the police talk, with your daughters? as well as your son.
When you say police talk, you're talking about.
But talk about what do you do when the police stop you as an African American?
Well, somewhat to some degree. My we talk about it indirectly. I've never had them say under this circumstance do this, but I always tell them that you pick and choose your battles. I say, even if you're wrong, they're wrong or you feel like you're right, I said, that's not the time to have that debate because you will lose at that time. I said, you just respectful, they want to give you a ticket or whatever, or they tell you to move along, don't feel like you want to fill your wild oats then. I said, because that's not the time nor the place. I said, you pick and choose, the battles. I'm gonna tell you, I know this sounds anti-Christian, but one of the things I had, every last one of my kids, I made them watch The Godfather with me.
Did you really?
That's my favorite movie of all time, but not because of the violence in it. But if you look at the issue of the family values, and then the it's almost like it's a strategic movie. When you think about how that family and the mafia moved from place to place and the choices they made, it was all strategically done. When you fight, when you don't fight, So I made them all watch. Even my youngest has seen that, and I made them watch it. And I have them talk to me about it. Tell me what this. We watch a scene and I'll stop it. Tell me about what you saw there. And let's talk the insight of that and what that scene meant and why did they make that choice. And I do that because I want them thinking this process through. So that's why I say it's more of an indirect with the police talk. I say because I want you out thinking your opponent. If that's what you're looking at, don't let your emotions be your undoing. Like Sonny Corleone got shot up, because they knew he was a hothead. And I said, I said, Michael was a cool one,
Right.
So
exactly.
I said, you look at how that movie progressed and the different children that was in that movie for Fredo, who's the weak one, and the older and the youngest one. But you look at how they handled their business and who succeeded, which was Michael, who was a cool one. Very thoughtful, not a hothead. And I said, that's
not
what
reactionary,
I want.
but actually strategic.
Exactly. And so I told them that's the part of the movie I want them to get out of it, not the violence part, but just the part of the strategic plan in your life. And I said, and that's why I say, and I know going back to Christian, I say you keep God first, which is, I know is anti-mafia stuff, but you keep God first. You always live by those principles, and then you say, okay, how do I get from point A to point B? And I said, you're going to meet people along the way. I said, and you get everything. Everybody has something to offer you that's going to be helpful in your life. From the person that empties the trash cans, from the person who's a CEO of a company.
Right.
I said, you can learn from everybody. The question is, what do you learn? And taking that information, how you incorporate that into your life to make you a better person.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
So back up, Barb. Chief Boone has said when he was on our show that the killing of African American men, young men in particular, is a public health issue at this point, more so than a criminal issue. Do you agree with that? And what do you think we need to do as a community to stop it?
Well, I think unfortunately so, I tell you, I know this, again, sounds bad, but I think when we took religion out of the schools, I think that was a mistake. And again, compassion for your fellow man is something that's learned through Christian giving. And it doesn't, everybody, I'm not saying that Christianity is always the answer for everybody. For me, that's the answer. But there are other religious beliefs and other things. But typically, if you look at most religions, they're all built on compassion and care.
Respect and caring.
And that has fallen by the wayside. And if you look at parents, sometimes parents worse than the kids. And that's where, if you're not teaching your kid that aspect of compassion in life, and if you think that a life means so little that you could snuff it out, that's forever. At least on the earthly level, that's forever. And I think, unfortunately, yes, I think it's a health crisis, but it's a crisis from all aspects. And until we have learned to have compassion for each other, and to, but at the same time, society has created a lot of this. It just the way, the inability, like, you think about it, for you to ask me the question about the police, what does that say? That has to come up to say how we have to behave when the police stop us, because otherwise we may get shot. So we've come that's where we are in this world now, that we have to fear the police. They're supposed to be there to help us.
Exactly.
So, it's a worldwide, well, I should say, at least in the U.S., I know for a fact that's a problem in itself. But I think that lack of compassion we've learned over the years, wherever it came from, has been our undoing. And until we get to back where we start having compassion for one another, that we can say that a life does mean something. Until we get to that stage again, I'm not sure where we're going to be. But yes, I think it's a crisis from all aspects. But we have to start somewhere. Teaching, I think, getting, having mentors, that men serve as mentors for some of these young fellows that are coming up, that they know there's something more.
Because they are missing, like you were talking about, that piece from another man to teach them how to be true men.
The downside and I know it's tough because, we all have families, we all have lives to lead. But I tell you, the one thing, I had a banker friend of mine told me that there was she was sat on a board and had a young lady who was who lived in a public house, and that they had as a community person on this particular board. And she says when she first came in, her dress attire was not necessarily appropriate, her behavior was not necessarily appropriate, but over time, kept coming back to these meetings, that she saw a change in this young lady as she was around people who were more on the professional level, who were corporate folks and what have you. And then her demeanor started to change. She started to take on the persona of those that were around her, to the point where she went back to school, got a college education, and got a master's degree. And I think she told me had a PhD, which is, again, that's a great thing to see that. But and I say all that to say this, the moral of that story is just having, like, say, you get, like some groups I've seen, they'll like bring some young guys in once a year, where the other 364 days they're back in their environment they were in. So although you may impact them for that day, the next day and the day after and the week after, they go back to the same environment they were in, which is when you have that influence 364 days of the year, that one day is not necessarily always going to, going to make a difference. But I think just constant repetitive involvement. And again, and if we have more people involved with wanting to help some of the young fellas out, then it doesn't have to fall on any one individual, because you could have a host of people that be willing to do it, that person could just, it's just really just seeing there's a different side of life.
Because if all you know is what you know, then you can't expand and you can't grow.
That's what I tell people all the time.
So you've been married for how many years?
21, I think now. So I know my wife would kill me if I didn't remember that. So actually 20, I think 22. 22 years.
Okay.
So we're in that time
Somewhere
frame.
in that time frame. But this is all, which is a decent amount of time.
Yeah.
But if you listen to media, if you look at the way some people portray the African American community, you think that we're all single mothers, and then everybody's hooking up, but nobody's in real relationship. Yeah. What do you say about the state of marital relationships within the African American community?
Well, I think the only unfortunate reality that we have is it's not necessarily the individual issue of the marriage itself, but just our selfishness as people. Marriage is about giving and sacrifice. It's not about your individuality. The question is whether or not each person in that marriage can respect the other person and where they are and where they came from. And I see this on both sides. The one thing is, as a doc, I see I have people come in. I could tell the story because I'm not saying any names, but I couldn't help but laugh. But I had a husband and wife team that, and I know both. Mm-hmm. And the wife I've taken care of longer than the husband, but I used to take care of both. And the guy's a really nice guy, so the wife would come in always complaining about the husband, talking about he was a lousy husband and he didn't respect her, he didn't do this, that, and the other. And I used to listen to her, and I used to say, well, why you say that? And she would give these examples, but she gave one example in particular where she said they went on they both retired, you know, and they live on fixed income. They both retired and went on a boat ride, and she got mad at him because she bought some ring that was in a jewelry store that was like $20,000.
Oh, hello.
And didn't say anything to him about it.
You might want to have a little conversation with him.
And so, you know, and she got mad at him, saying that he was mean because he didn't respect the fact that she wanted this ring. And so the first question I asked her was, well, did you talk to him about it beforehand? And she said, no, but I raised his kids. I did this, that, and the other. I said, I'm going to do you like Chris Rock. Chris Rock talking about, he made a comment, one of his stand-ups when they talking about, he said, my mentality makes me mad when they say, I paid my child support. He's like, you're supposed to pay your child support. So I said, what do you mean? I said, you want a cookie because you raised kids? I said, you know, that was your job as a wife, just like his job as a husband to help raise children. But you shouldn't expect things just because you did that. But I said, if y'all on a fixed income,
that's a lot of money.
You know, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money when you're not on the fixed income.
I mean, so I said, so why would you get mad? So I say all this to say this. In the state of a marriage, what I'm finding that, in my opinion, again, this is just my humble opinion, is that each person has to, respect that other person for where they are, because they're not going to be you. You know, so part of the issue, and that's something I've had to learn, I've expected my wife to be like I am, do what I do, think the way I think. But that's not her. She's a different person. The question is, can you accept that person for who they are and where they are in their life? And it may change, but again, they say it's supposed to be for better or worse. You know, but you have to be respectful of each other's position. And they're not going to do it like you do. You know, they're not going to be who you are. But the thing is, can you respect that, and can they respect you to the point that you have a meaningful relationship? It really is not 50-50. It should be 100-100. You're giving your 100%. But it's not my job to police your 100%. And that's what I think we do. We'll sit there and say, you're not giving.
You're not doing this.
You're not doing your
that.
part. I'm like, yeah, but that ain't your job. I mean, that's not your job to regulate that person's part. Your job is to regulate you. You can only be responsible for you. You can't be responsible for somebody else. So if you're giving your 100, then that's it. Then you be quiet. Now, if you get to a point where you know the relationship just can't, you know, prosper, that's a different story. But you can't. What I found a lot of times, everybody wants to police the other person's 100%.
Well, and the other thing too is that you got to keep working at it.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we tend to just give up too quickly.
You know, one of the things that I was hurt by with the Bill Cosby thing, you know, and I tell people all the time, despite how you may feel about him and what he did in this issue with women, I said, which we still don't really know. You know, I don't pass judgment. That's why I say my Christian beliefs won't allow me to pass judgment. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But don't take away what he brought to bring a different part of the African American community to light that wasn't really
that
brought
nobody
out
else
before.
knew about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, if you look at most TV shows, we were drug dealers and crackheads.
Crackheads. We lived in the projects.
Yeah.
You know, nobody ever talked about educated, middle-class African-American families that are the reality of many, many people.
Yeah, so you really think about what that show, the Cosby Show, at that time led to open doors for other people. I can't take that away from him. Despite the other stuff, I'm like, hey, you know, that's between him and Jesus. You know, I don't have anything to do with that. But what he brought, I just hate to see that being tainted, because that brought a different thought to what people viewed.
I can hear all the feminists out there yelling at me, going, "Barbara, challenge him."
Yeah,
but the fact of the matter is, as you had said all along, people are multifaceted, and we bring a variety of things to the table.
I'm just talking about specifically not
the
that
specific
part of him,
show,
but just looking at what that brought to, and if you look at what it did for the community at that time, that's all I'm speaking of. It's not to him as an
Well, and
individual
I mean,
person.
even looking at the other shows that spun off
Yeah.
from the Cosby Show,
Look at
also
Blackish,
because the whole idea,
you know.
Blackish,
Yeah.
the whole idea of HBCUs,
Yes.
and the fact that black kids were going to college
Yes.
and doing all the things that every other middle class family was doing, but that you rarely ever heard anything about. All right, we don't have much time left, so I got to get to one other thing. So, what made you decide to become an entrepreneur? In addition to, I mean, you're already running a medical practice, and now you're gonna go out and run restaurants too.
Well, well, I tell you, for me, I tell you what originally did that for me was thinking about my father and wanting to make sure that my family had something if something happened to me. There wasn't just insurance money.
Gotcha.
But in all honesty, that was really what prompted that piece, because I know, like right now, if something happens to me, stuff stops. Because our livelihood is based on the practice. So I wanted something else just in case something happened to me. That was really the initial focus for that.
That's such a tough business, though.
It is. I'm not gonna lie on that one, but I know I'm not smart enough to do but so much of that. I let people more expert than I do that piece. But for me, it's always challenging myself, has been the second thing that did that. When I did the Fort Norfolk building, when I designed that project, everybody told me I wasn't qualified. I mean, they blew me off to say, that I was, what
How
are you
can
doing?
you do this? You're a doctor. Go look at somebody's heart.
Exactly.
And leave me alone.
And the thing that I would share with the listening audience, that sounds a little cliched, but, I've never been one to believe in you should do what somebody thinks you should do. I'm like, who are you to tell me what I'm qualified to do and what I'm not? And the day that I let that happen is the day I need to go off into the great beyond, because that is not in my lifetime ever going to happen. Do not try to tell me what I'm qualified to do. I had that talk with all my kids, to say, do not ever let anybody do that. And part of why I did what I did was not so much to prove a point, but I had to prove a point to me that I could do it.
That you could do it.
And I did the background on development work. I hadn't had a clue. I had people that were willing to help me because I'm a guy that I treat people with respect. So when I asked people for things, can you teach me what you know about this business? And a lot of people would do that, and they helped me along the way. And it's a process that you have to learn. But would I do it again? No. That was no. That's a lot of work, because I was working as a full-time cardiologist and trying to do that.
I was going to ask you, were you doing both at the same time?
I was doing both. And I was up many a night with planning and preparation for that Fort Norfolk building. But it got up, and it got up in the time when nobody else could get those buildings up. That was in 2008 when the market crashed,
was crashing. Yeah,
and nobody was loaning money.
Wow.
But I had to come up with different financing strategies that I thought would be helpful. So I did a lot of background research. So I say all this to say, if nothing else, my last words on this show would be is to truly believe in what you feel you are capable of doing, and do not let anyone tell you different. Now, the key thing to me is planning, preparation, perseverance, and tenacity. You can't say I want to do it, then do nothing to try to make it happen, and don't think somebody's going to hand you anything.
Did you ever get to a point though where you just said, maybe I did bite off more than I could chew?
No.
Really?
I would have done it different. Now, that I have said plenty of times, but would I have done it, would I not do it? No, never felt that way. Anything I do is plan. Everything I do is plan. Everything I've done, I've taken into account. I've looked at it. I wake up in the middle of the night with ideas, and I write them down and go back to sleep. And so the next day, because I won't forget them, I keep my little notepad by my bedside so I can think. And I will sometimes wake up in the middle of the night with some type of premonition of what I think I may want to try. I write it down and go back to sleep. Fortunately, I don't wake my wife up in the process, but I do that because for me, and then, I kind of have this way, when I'm dealing with a patient, when I come up with a plan, I have a plan, a contingency plan, and a backup to the contingency plan. So I'm already thinking
So you're already thinking
ahead of time.
If this doesn't work, I can try this.
I'm going to do this. This is already planned, because when you're going through that process, you have to do a process of elimination of saying, do you think this process is what this patient has? And again, we're not perfect with it, but people know they have my all. They're going to always have my all. But I've always been a planner. And the same thing, I remember I read an article my father did when he was from Journal and Guide way back when, and he said he was a planner. So I took that on as part of my persona.
So in writing, we got about 3 minutes left in the show. So in writing in your notebook, have you written down mayor, delegate, senator?
Listen, I tell you, I people ask me that all the time, though, because they know my persona is one of compassion, and they know I want to get something done. But that politics, I couldn't live in that world, because it's acceptable for the games that are played in that world, but I can't go by that. I'm like, we're not going to play games. I'm going to tell people exactly what I think, and I'm going to tell them exactly my thought process. Now, the thing what I do different, I'm a listener. And if something makes sense and it's good for everybody, not just any one individual person, I'm gonna roll with it. And I think that's where I wish politicians took that into account. We know that things that are done are not going to be good for one individual. It may need to be good for everybody. You like to see that's what they're doing, but unfortunately, so we know that doesn't work. But I think I'm gonna stick to medicine. I think I'm gonna stick to medicine. I'll leave the politics to those who want to engage in that. But I do like to help, though. I do offer advice, and I do have friends in politics. I have a lot of friends in politics.
So you tell them straight up what you think
I will tell
about
them what
an
I think.
issue,
And I will.
whatever.
But they know anytime I call them, I never call anybody unless I'm trying to help somebody else. I don't call for me. I really don't. People who know me know I rarely call anybody because I want something. Usually I'm calling because I'm looking for something that's going to help somebody else.
So anything else on your bucket list that you can share?
I tell you,
In 1 minute?
at one point in time, I would like to travel more. I've been so sheltered because I've worked all my life. I work I'm up at 4 a.m. Wow. And I get to the office by 5, and I'm, working, and I usually get home somewhere between 8 and midnight every night. And that's been my life for so many years. So I haven't had a chance to go. I've always wanted to go to Austria. I've wanted to go to Africa.
So are you going to retire early and go?
No, I don't think I'm going to retire early, but I think I would. I don't want to feel like one thing I'm not going to do is be some 90-some-year-old doctor walking around the hallways, can't even get from point A to point B. That I'm not going to do. But when I feel like my time is right, I've talked to my wife and I say, listen, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? And she tells me, and we come up with a conclusion about that piece of my life. That's when I would do it. But not right now.
We got to go.
I know.
Dr. Newby.
Love you.
Love you so much. Thank you so much for all the time you have spent with us. I appreciate that.
Anytime.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And before we go, let me tell you about the upcoming screening of the documentary We Cried Power. It's the story of civil rights leader Reverend William J. Barber and his Poor People's Campaign. Reverend Barber has revived Dr. Martin Luther King's 1968 Poor People's Campaign with the goal of ending poverty forever. The screening is free, will be held at Coastal Virginia Unitarian Universalist, which is on South Military Highway in Virginia Beach. That's also on January 20th at 7 p.m. Everyone is welcome to attend. Next week on Another View, the Another View Roundtable kicks off the new year on our new day, Thursday, January 9th at noon. We hope you will join us. Our theme music was performed and composed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Be sure to tune in next Thursday at noon for Another View.